Okay, here we are. Hi, everybody. So, welcome to another Good Gut Live. For those that aren't aware, Good Gut Live is live every Friday. And the benefit of joining Good Gut Live is you can interact. So, we can see your chat, we can see your comments. If you're here with us later on, you're maybe listening on Spotify or iHeartRadio or Apple on the Good Gut Live podcast. So, thank you for tuning in. If you want to submit a topic for Good Gut Live, you can comment that down below whether you're live or you're listening later. This is a special Good Gut Live. They're all somewhat special, I'd say, but this is extra special where we have all of our dietitians, or I should say most of our dietitians here with us to just give their perspective, give their experience. Many of them just have a variety of specialties. They are unique in many ways and they serve a very unique and special patient demographic. So it's really special when they're all here, especially on this topic, which is how to stay emotionally balanced during stressful times. And so, right now, if you're live, the holidays are coming up. If you're listening later, this is actually the first episode of season 2 of Good Gut Live. So the new year is underway, and maybe you're recovering from all the holidays. So before we get into all of that, let's all have kind of everyone just introduce themselves. Maggie, go ahead. Can you just give an intro of your name and your specialty, and we'll give a little intro.
Sure. My name is Maggie Collins. I specialize in diabetes education and also lifestyle medicine.
All right, Laura, go for it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura. I'm also known as the Emotional RD. I'm a licensed registered dietitian in Georgia, and I work with women's health, hormones, and all things nervous system support and stress resilience.
Go for it, Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Chakos. I'm a licensed registered dietitian and I'm also a PhD candidate. My research revolves around breast cancer and diet interventions during treatment. And I also specialize in women's health, plant-based nutrition, and oncology dietetics.
Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Cantor-Frias, registered dietitian, and I specialize in gut-centered nutrition and diseases, IBS, SIBO. Yeah.
And Damaris.
And Damaris, I love working. I'm also a registered dietitian, and I'm also a student of naturopathic medicine. And I love working with kids, teens, chronic metabolic diseases, all the good stuff.
Wonderful. And so before you click off and go like emotional balance and wellness, what do I care about that? I have diabetes or I have high cholesterol or that doesn't concern me. Just know there are many great studies out there that will say otherwise, right? I think first and foremost off the bat, it's kind of this invisible a factor of wellness and health that I don't think gets enough attention, which is just the energy, right? Whether you want to say it's the biofield energy, which is well documented in PubMed and many great studies, whether it's the verbalization, right? Positive or negative, but this idea of energy and emotions really, really can factor into health. And I could speak on that from especially the gut and gut microbiome. And many of us can speak in it in different areas, but it's understanding that, one of the quotes we recently put out there was, sometimes it's not the food causing the symptoms, it's who you're eating the food with. And that could be very powerful. And I think right now with the holidays coming up, it's, who's that family member you're sitting with or the crazy uncle, or maybe you haven't seen someone in the family or a friend in a long time. There's so many factors at play. If you're listening to this, maybe you just finished the holidays and now it's the new year and there's someone in your household on you about changing something, or they're unhappy with so many different areas. So this will play into how you're feeling physically, right? And I think that's so important. Is anyone feeling something of like maybe a recent patient or kind of can speak to this of the idea of this imbalance, I guess, that can occur, and then the effects of that? I don't know if anyone.
I can go ahead and get started just because I have a patient memory that just kind of came up, is that oftentimes there can be a bit of like a balancing act between the emotional space that we have to then work on things from a nutrition perspective. And sometimes that emotional space might be too full. We might not have that availability to work on our physical self. And so oftentimes some of those emotional elements need to be addressed first so that we can have the space to then make some of those physical changes and work towards improved nutrition. So sometimes within practice, we can kind of have to play both sides of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very important. I mean, it's this idea that stressful times will come, right? It's not like, oh, if they will, it's when they will. And so we give the example of holidays, but I think there's many times in our life where stress is a factor, stress is affecting us. And then how are you handling that? That's really the question. How are you handling that? Are you getting angry and having big outbursts, or are you getting sad and kind of going within? And it speaks to that level. And I know Laura can speak to this, but the idea of the nervous system and the response you have to that, and know that response is deeply rooted, likely from your childhood. It's how you responded as a child is typically how you'll respond as an adult. And then, is that response healthy? Is the response conducive to a more positive outcome, right? And what that looks like. Yeah.
I'll jump into that wagon that you just opened up. I think it's important. Something that I always tell my patients and the people that I work with is to have like a little bit of an understanding of how stress works in the body physiologically. I think when we have a better understanding of how our body works physically, then we kind of have a better capacity to actually do the work or understand a little bit why we feel the way that we're feeling. And
Mhm.
stress can come from so many different places. It's like if you had a bucket and then you would sit down and reflect, okay, what are the biggest stressors in my life? And it could be, what stresses the body physiologically. It could be injury, it could be diseases, it could be emotions that we are just simply too overwhelmed to feel. That can be stressful for the body. Nutrition wise, also, if we're not giving the body the nutrition that it needs, then the body internally physiologically will have a type of a stress response. And then on top of that, we have relationships. So how are we relating to our partners and husbands and girlfriends and all of this stuff, right? Our friends, our children, all of these things kind of add up, and you can add them into like a bucket and kind of see where you stand with stress. And then just to know that the stress response, whether you feel it consciously or unconsciously, your body internally will go through a process of like a whole process. And it involves not only the sensation and the feeling, but it will also involve hormones and resources, because you need to go through resources in order to be able to adapt and take on the stress. So if we're going through so much stress in life and we're not replenishing through nutrition or lifestyle interventions, then our body eventually is going to feel depleted, and it eventually will burn out in a way. That's the point where your body's going to, shut down and just like, hey, I'm not with you in this one type of thing. You're on your own, and you have to actually look into it. Like, you no longer can like run away in a way. But I often like to say also that this is a good thing, because your body will always have your back in that way. It will go to the extreme to let you know that this needs attention. And I just think it's important to know that stress can come in many ways. We will be stressed. That's just not a question. It's just how we handle the stress, and are we aware of it? And so that's always the invitation. It's like, okay, first of all, am I aware of it? Second of all, what are my stressors? And then from there, you can start peeling away. But it's just like what James was saying, kind of to bring it back. It's like not perfection. It's not about, I don't want to have stressors in my life. Stress is actually necessary in certain positions and in certain situations. You actually need to be stressed so that you can run away from danger. But what we want to let the body know is that it doesn't have to be stressed all the time. Like, we had the stressful situation, whatever it is that is causing the stress. Then how do we get back to a calming and just like letting the body know, like physically, that it's not running away from a lion type of thing. And I think this is the topic that we're talking about today specifically. And I think all of us can relate and empathize with that, because at some point in our lives, we've experienced stress. And I'm sure we all have different tips and techniques and approaches that we can approach stress, especially now that we're approaching holidays and families and all of the things. So we're excited to share more with you, but I just wanted to share a little bit of an overview about stress and how it affects the body, not just nutrition, but also emotions. It's the whole thing. We're a little bit nuanced as humans, but hey, when we have the tools, things, we can handle the stress a little bit better, and the body has more capacity for it.
Yes.
I do
Go
want
ahead,
to bring
Damaris.
something up, because I think for some people listening, it's easy to recognize how does stress feel. Like, okay, my mood has changed, I'm antsy, but for other people, and myself included, I had to learn this. How does stress feel for me? And what are some signs and symptoms my body's giving me? Hey, we've probably got too much stress going on. So I just thought I would share some. And like, increased heart rate definitely is something that potentially could happen, that you're moody, but also just muscle tension, headaches, appetite changes, that you're either not hungry or that you're very hungry and you're like, why is this happening? Why am I not hungry? Or digestive issues, you're constantly bloated, or you're constantly having diarrhea or abdominal pain, skin issues, hair issues. So many symptoms where you're just like, oh, that's so bizarre. Like, where could that be coming from? And you could be looking for a diagnosis, but turns out that there was an underlying factor of stress. So sometimes I just want to encourage people out there listening to maybe pay more attention to your body, first of all, and try to figure out, like, okay, what am I feeling? And sometimes stress is mental, but sometimes it's very physical, and sometimes it's both. So yeah, just wanted to bring that out there before we keep going.
Yeah, I love that, Damaris. Just a comment on that, because this concept for people can be so abstract, right? Where it's like, what do you stress and emotions, and it's just what I always think of. I know it might be a horrible example, but that Wolf of Wall Street, where it's like the Fugazi Fugai, it never materializes or actualizes, but it does. And you brought that up, where it's like the signs and symptoms or stress are just kind of so wide reaching that can almost overwhelm people in a new way, where it's like, wait, if I'm too hungry or not hungry enough, or if I I was looking at that too in my notes, where it's like insomnia, fatigue, irritability, emotional withdrawal, change in appetite. There's so many. It kind of almost manifests differently, right, for everybody, and depending what's going on. But these stressors are just kind of there. And what I'll say is, like, over time, I also had to kind of understand this for myself and put them into categories so it's easier to understand, where there's really just three main categories, right? It's physical, it's chemical, and it's emotional. Those are the three main categories for stress. And that kind of encompasses everything, right? Because the physical is like physical stress, someone's hitting you, or a car accident, or like you're actually getting, because that's stressful, right? You fall and you're bleeding, and it's like, oh my gosh, you feel this adrenaline and all your stress hormones go up, and that's stressful. Chemical, drugs, right? They can, if you're, whether it's illegal drugs or it's even pharmaceuticals, you maybe took too much and now you're freaking out. Chemical can also mean what you're eating and drinking, causing stress within your body. And then obviously the emotional and spiritual, which we're kind of hitting more on, but those are the kind of the fugazi, where it's like, oh, there's so many out there. It's like, oh, it's not real. That's fine. I'm good, right? Nothing's going on. But one thing many psychologists and just therapists agree on, and what a lot of great science shows, is what you're thinking in your brain, or I guess another way to say this is, your brain can't differentiate what's real and what is not. So if I'm thinking I'm flying to the moon, my brain's going, James is flying to the moon. That's wow. That's really great, right? If I'm thinking about sharks, I do have kind of this, when I'm out surfing, sometimes I think about sharks under me, and I'm like, calm down. Like, I feel my breathing getting more shallow, and like I try not to freak out, especially the days when the water's like not really see through. And it's like, I wonder what's under there. And so you start to freak yourself out when my brain is thinking there's probably a shark there, but there's not actually a shark there. So you see how powerful our brains are. And in those three categories, right? So it's like exploring what are those three categories looking like for you. And everyone's so different. Everyone's so different. Yeah. So it's very interesting. And then the manifestation of that can be, well, what if you are stressing yourself out, for example, too much with food, with that chemical category? Uh, Blood sugar issues, right? Metabolic issues. What does that look like then? It is, are these issues like metabolic syndrome then a kind of a result of this stress, right? And can the emotions play into that? I'm sure it's very emotionally strenuous when you're having to constantly check your blood sugar, or you're feeling lightheaded when you're out and about, and the list goes on and on. So it's almost like this compounding effect of, man, my emotions maybe got me into this, where I started overeating food, and now I'm having to deal with more emotions from that as a consequence, right? So it's very deep. It can go very deep for sure. Yeah. Any other additions to that?
I mean, there's even a terminology for that, diabetes distress, right? For individuals that now are diagnosed with diabetes, and there's a whole set of stressors, just thinking about the blood sugar, if somebody gets on insulin, learning how to, calculate how much insulin to inject, the potential for hypoglycemia, so recognizing that individuals with chronic diseases have a whole new set of stressors, like Laura was mentioning in the bucket, right? So there are different categories of stressors. So recognizing, and working with a health professional, specializing in the area that can help them, relieve that stresses by understanding the pathophysiology of their condition and how their choices, can help them better handle and reduce those events that can cause, the stress.
Yeah, I'll kind of speak to the patients that I work with. If you have IBS or like food sensitivities, and you might be sensitive to FODMAPs or sensitive to foods that are higher in histamine. So each meal, and thinking just from the point of like preparing the meal or thinking about what you might eat. Maybe you're away from home and you don't have all the normal foods that you're typically used to eating, and that you can tolerate. And so just even the idea of eating, and then down to like the situation of eating and the types of foods, there can be a lot of stress associated with whether, how my body will react to this food. And so I think it's really important to kind of evaluate like these acute moments of stress, and then also like compared to like the chronic effects of that. So just kind of taking each moment at a time. Like, I'm here with this meal, I'm doing the best that I can. Maybe you have some supplements that were recommended to take in these certain situations to better acclimate the body to be able to handle a certain meal when you are out and about. But knowing that calming the brain down, maybe taking some minutes or seconds, whatever you have, to breathe before your meal, just to pay attention to that acute moment of stress, so that you are reducing those long-term chronic effects of stress that can just exacerbate all the symptoms that you're already kind of dealing with. So just all these different times that we have to pay attention to stress. And I love how everyone's speaking to paying attention to what it is that you personally are feeling, because it will look different for everybody. And also paying attention to that in other people and how they might be normalizing these symptoms. Maybe I tend to notice that I have shallow breathing, like James mentioned, and the person you're hanging out with is like, yeah, that happens to me all the time, and kind of just taking a step back and being like, wait a minute, like, the symptom is not normal just because everyone is experiencing it, because we do live in such a fast-paced society, to take a step back and evaluate some of those symptoms in the moment and for the long term.
And I want to expand on that, Rachel, because yeah, it's so important, like these tips and actionable items, because it's like, okay, we've identified, okay, the physical, chemical, emotional. I hope we can even speak on this more eventually or even now, but the idea that, yeah, your emotions and these stressors can impact you in those three categories, kind of what that looks like, some of the symptoms, manifestations can be anywhere from metabolic issues to gut issues to even, I would even say, cancer, to so many other things. So how do we overcome this? Like, what do we what I guess are you guys seeing? What are some actionable items, either personally, professionally? Like, how are we all helping patients to overcome this, or how are you even personally dealing with this? Because I know we all have stress for sure.
I'd say one point that people can have a practical application is understanding that food and mood are related too. So not just trying to control the emotions, but to feed the body with the right nutrients that is going to help your body be your brain work better and be more resilient to the stressors too. All the neurotransmitters that depend on good nutrition, should be formed. So not disconnecting the two, right? It goes both ways. Your emotions can affect how you're going to digest, absorb nutrients, but the foods you're choosing to eat is going to feed the neurotransmitters and help you to have better mood and deal with stress in a better way.
I love that.
I would love
I
to
think
help. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Oh, thanks, Tamars. I think one thing what I love so much about all of us at Married to Health is I know that all of us talk with our patients about their stress levels at every visit to really see, like, where are we today in this moment together? What's going on? What is taking up that space in your brain? And what I also do with patients, whether they have been diagnosed with cancer or maybe they're pregnant or have all these other conditions, is naming what that stress is about. We can oftentimes, patients might say, oh, I'm just really stressed. But let's dive a little bit deeper and let's sit in that. Is it, for a cancer patient, I'm stressed because I'm afraid of my cancer coming back and having a recurrence. I'm afraid that I'm not feeding my baby enough during pregnancy, and really identifying, okay, what is it that is causing this physical reaction of having these symptoms of stress or the emotional, thoughts that are going on? And how can we then, once we've identified where that is coming from, having that integrative approach, then we know, okay, is it education? Do we need to dive into a different area, or have Laura come in and do some emotional release? Something like that gives us a little bit more of a direction on which we can address these symptoms for patients.
Yeah, and to comment on that, like, these emotions can arise, or these events in life that cause maybe some trauma and that big emotion, and it's so important to process it, because then I think the emotional release aspect comes in, is when we just kind of bury. Life continues, and it's like those sedimentation layers, right? We learn about in history or in science class, where it's like, look at all the layers over time that have built up, and it's like, oh, now there's that. Remember that trauma from when you were 5 years old? That's buried under there, and now you have to dig it out and spend time digging it and digging it. Where ideally, and what I know I try to do now, is when something big happens in life, I use my tools, and whether it's all three categories, right? Physical, chemical, emotional, and process it, so it's not getting stuck over time in those layers, and that feels so much better. And to even Maggie's comment, I love the food, right? The kind of chemical aspect of it all is so important. Like, food equals mood. If Dahlia was here, she'd say feel with each meal. We say heal with each meal, but also feel with each meal. Like, you are feeling good with food, and food helps you feel good. It's just like back and forth. But I can speak personally, just giving my own kind of story just really quickly, is like, for so long I was so focused on the physical and chemical, like nutrition, health. If I just do everything, if I work out 6 days a week, and I'm eating plant-based, and I'm whole food plant-based, and do all of that perfectly, it's going to be great. And it was, to an extent, but neglecting that emotional, spiritual side of things, is what I did at some point in my life. And it was like, oh, wow, like, oh, I really need to rebalance this a little bit, and really understanding the aspect of, okay, stressors will happen, but then how are we dealing with them? Or are we letting them kind of get buried? And now, I guess another analogy I like to use is like you got stabbed with something and there's a piece of shrapnel in there, right? A piece of it is left inside of you, and the scab healed over, and great, it's like you're functioning, your arm works, but every now and then it's like, oh, it feels funny, or like, oh, there's something stuck in there, right? And the painful part about that, because if you're not dealing with it right when you got stabbed, if you're waiting 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 years, is now you have to peel open that skin again and go, ow, that hurts. And but I got to take out this piece of metal stuck in there, right? And so it's interesting how this kind of just compounds over time, where yes, the stressful events happening, and maybe it's coming through food, it's coming through people, it's coming through this, and you have that old shrapnel from 20 years ago affecting, and so you see this perfect storm arising. And that happens to us all, right? We all kind of experience that, and especially as the older you get. I'm not a young college student anymore or anything like that, but the older you get, you're like, oh wow, I probably should have dealt with that 15 years ago. But hey, today's the next best time to do it, right? And it's going to help when then the new stress comes. I'm not still dealing with that old stress, and I can better process this new stress using my tools at hand. So it's very important to kind of balance out those categories. It's going to help with all the categories when you're just kind of giving attention to all of them in your own healthy way, right? We're all kind of different in that. I don't know if that does
Yeah,
that
it
kind of
makes
make
sense.
sense. My analogies, I like to use analogies, but
It made
sometimes
sense.
sometimes they're crazy.
I like to often say it's not about, like many people, when they come to you, they want something gone. They want to fix something. They want to remove this disease, or remove or take something away and fix it quickly. And what I always try to do is like, where can we change the narrative? Because it's really hard to let go a part of you, or a disease, or something where you've created an identity to.
Mm.
Like, you can't let go of something if you have no relationship of this part. You've never really taken the space and the time to inquiry, or like explore with curiosity, well, how does this disease make me feel? Or how does this disease feel in my body? Where do I even locate this disease? And just playing with this curiosity, that's something that I do often when I go into these sessions, is like, awareness, it's a big skill, and we all have it. We just have to practice it daily. And body awareness, like Damaris mentioned at the beginning, it's something that we have to go back and remember again, because we knew these when we were babies. It's not that we don't have it, it's that we just kind of forgot along the way, and then we just had to do whatever we had to do to kind of survive and get to this point. But now it's no longer serving us. Now we have to kind of remember again how to feel and how to be in touch with this body. And the way that you do that is, well, there's many, many, many types of exercises and ways that you can do this, but a simple one is bringing the breath again into your system. Breathing can take you back to your body in a second. There's there's a very interesting way of, like, have you ever felt anxious in your life? Probably. And both anxious feelings and excitement, they're the same, but the difference is the breathing pattern. When we're
That's a
feeling
huge point.
anxious,
I never
when we're
thought of that
feeling
point.
anxious, it's the breath. The breath is shallow, everything. It's like you're getting yourself, it's like propelling this feeling. But you could always also be like excited, and your breath can be a little bit like, so it's like, we want to bring this awareness into the body, and the way that we do that is with breath. First things. It's like, okay, can I take a big breath right now? Like, just kind of like just allow your body to kind of be in the moment, be in the space. And body scans are great options and great tools too. So like if you're not very in touch or in relationship with your body and you don't really know, well, I have all of this stress and all of these things, how do I start? Well, it takes a little bit of effort, and like any habit is going to be a little bit challenging at the beginning, but it requires a commitment from you with you of showing up every day to you and to your body, even especially when you are going through challenging times like cancer, like diabetes, like all of these issues or things that are there with us. And if we don't take the time to get curious, it's like, what is this disease or this symptom trying to communicate? Like I think we have like a view of in medicine that it's like it's something bad, but I think there's magic and a silver lining in every disease in a way. There's always a teaching, there's always something that your body wants you to learn and take home with. And I do believe, and I have the firm belief, and I think, I don't know, it's like your body is wired for healing. You see it all the time. You cut your finger, it will heal. It will not make you bleed out, because that's not how the body works. So this is something that's so simple, but this happens also with emotions and things that we cannot see, like when we cut. But just think about it. You cut your finger, and after 2 days, 3 days, it's a process. It heals, and the body will always want to do that. And so that's something that I always like remind the people that I see is like, your body really wants you to thrive. It just needs the right environment and the right tools, and it will do that. You've experienced it with a cut, and it's so simple, but it works. There's people obviously like, yeah, sometimes we have issues with medication and stuff like that, but if it wasn't for that, the body's always equipped to do that.
Yeah.
So breath is one of the things that I would use often. Inhaling, exhaling deep, just 2, 3, 5 times. It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be the whole day. Your body really appreciates any intention and attention that you provide. And then the other thing is that you have hands, and you can use these hands to provide support into your body. So like touching, and that's what I mean with somatic. Somatic is more like body oriented things. You can like touch yourself, like there's tapping techniques and stuff like that you can help your body kind of bring yourself back into this moment. You can even ground yourself into the space and just look around of like really what's happening, and letting your body know there's no danger, like you're safe, like really reminding your body that you're safe. But yeah, there's so many ways that you can manage stress with it, and at the end, really it boils down to, for me, in my opinion and my experience, it boils down to, how do I relate to myself? And have I taken the time to really reflect on the things that are bothering me or triggering me? Like, it just really takes awareness, and awareness, it's like a good wine. Takes time for it to be developed. And so yeah, if you could do awareness, and what does that even mean? It's just simply paying attention, slowing down. If you slow down and you breathe, you'll be able to be aware of your body. And if you add that every day with consistency, you'll start noticing more things. It's like suddenly you're more attuned, and the subtleties of like life in general, like you're able to almost like grasp. But it's a skill. It's a skill that if we're not used to using, it's going to be hard at the beginning. But yeah, that's my rant. Starts with relationship. It can go so deep. Oh my gosh.
I want to say 2 things. So one, it sounds like, yeah, no matter if it's the baby crying, if it's the gut gurgling, or or not doing what it needs to do, right? No bowel movement for 5 days. If it's the person who's like shallow breathing, if it's the patient whose cholesterol's high, like your body's telling you something, right? These things are not normal. Like I mean, a baby crying is normal, but the baby's, telling you something, right? So it's this idea of like, these are cues. And just like your phone ringing and ringing and ringing, you're eventually going to answer it. Hopefully you do. That's the point of the phone. And it's like, answer your body, right? What's your body telling you? What do you need to tap into? And then darn it, I knew I was going to forget my other point. Oh well, I had another one, but oh well, that was good enough, I guess. But yeah, it is like, okay, your body's saying these things. What are you gonna do about it, right? Oh, that's my other point is I want to share, like, I've also been a big tip I want to give on that note, Laura, because it's so important. I find myself with devices like just around me. I have a computer, I have another screen, I have my phone, and I have a tablet here. I find that I've been wanting and I've been really putting an effort to be more conscious to not be on a device constantly. Because I find when I get up from my computer, I have my phone and maybe I'm on YouTube or checking Instagram or Slack or whatever it is. And then when I'm doing dishes, I open the tablet and maybe I'm gonna do a little chores, so I'll throw on a show. And when I'm in the car, I'm listening to a podcast as I'm driving, which is great. Hey, whoever's listening to this, you're listening to it, great. But the point I'm making is, when am I ever with myself? Right? When do I turn everything off and breathe and think and pray and, hey, James, how are you? Or listen to nothing. And sometimes in nothing, I'm getting great ideas and you feel this beauty. And I've been having to consciously do that because it's so easy to not do it, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, right? That it's easier to not be with yourself, which is crazy. I don't know if anyone feels the same or has noticed that,
Yeah.
but
100%.
I have noticed something personally lately, because I'm also studying naturopathic medicine, and just like sometimes it can all build. And I've noticed that my mornings are crucial on how stress responses throughout the rest of the day. And this applies to adults and this applies to kids and like any person really. There's a couple of elements to that. One is I've noticed if I am feeding my mind with things on my device in the morning, thank you for pointing that out, James, it's exciting for the brain, but the brain is already on like, okay, processing immediately, just like hyperprocessing. And I've noticed that when I get to the different parts of my day that need me to just like be in the moment, focus on classwork or whatever it is, it's harder when we've already been wired through our morning stimulation. That's one thing. And for parents who have kids, please think about this. Like when you're showing them TV in the morning and then you're sending them to school, which way did you set up their brain for the morning? And then also nourishment. We talked about this. The baby cries when one of the reasons it cries of stress is because it's hungry, right? It's a sign I need help. And we don't think about this many times. Sometimes throughout the day, we get stressed and literally our brain needed more nutrition to handle it. And there is a problem, especially when there's like grazing throughout the day or taking really long breaks throughout the day between meals, especially adults who are working, women who are busy, mothers, then we are stressed. But if we would have taken a moment, eaten, it really would have nourished us and brought us back to like a calm moment. We're sitting and eating, and then also we're fueled again to meet with the demands and the stressors that are not in our control. So those are two big things I've noticed for sure. And something else I like to bring up, just because I love music, is the environment that you're in sometimes has uncontrollable things, but sometimes it also has controllable things. And I've personally noticed that people who experience stress that can be manifested as pain or, mentally just where your thoughts are. If you're able to bring peaceful music into the environment that you're in, or if a meal is stressful, it really helps reduce the pain. It brings you to the moment. It helps you enjoy the moment more. And these, like some of these elements are nutrition and some of these aren't. And it's because it's a total blend of these things that allows you to deal with it, right? It's like, okay, how can I prepare my body internally for stress? How am I nourished? How can I meet my surroundings with stress? Am I nourished? And I also didn't touch on this with the morning, but like taking a moment to build yourself also emotionally, spiritually, whatever is important. Yeah, there's like, you need to handle stress from so many angles because it comes in so many angles. So it's like, all right, what am I doing physically, like James mentioned, chemically? What am I doing emotionally, spiritually? What am I doing, in the different areas? So those are some things that came to my mind, especially with the kids I work with. Like, are they nourished? Like, they're having behavioral issues, but also, were they nourished? Are they just snacking on sweet things the whole day through? There's a lot of things to think about.
Totally. On that point, I wanna share the secret that those 3 fall under one category, which is energy. They're all energy. So yes, these are 3 categories that I think, especially when talking to patients, it helps them understand things a little bit better and go like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Just 3 categories of this stress or inflammation. Oh, wow. Okay. But really, those 3 categories fall under one, which is energy. I mean, it's physical energy. It's all energy at the end of the day. And this is scientifically documented. Of course, we've been saying this for a while, but 15 years ago and more, you sound like a woo woo, like, oh, that's crazy. But I think it's now more accepted to say, yeah, food is a chemical energy. And obviously there's physical energy and emotions, and even our voice and spirituality is a form of energy. And so at the end of the day, it's like what type of energy are you putting into or surrounding yourself with or putting onto your body? And of course it's going to affect us. We are energetic beings, right? We thrive on energy. We literally sunlight hits our skin and we start to have a chemical reaction. Like it's pretty amazing. Like just describing and talking about the amazing things of our body, like Laura mentioning, we cut ourselves and it heals. Like that's pretty crazy when you think about it. And when you take time, when you slow down, breathe, and take off the social media or whatever's going, and think about it, it's pretty insane. I just don't think we do slow down enough to think about these things. So it's very
And
cool.
sometimes, just to kind of tag along with that, sometimes it's really hard to do these things on our own. Sometimes we actually need help. Sometimes we
Yep.
need a guide. Sometimes we need a mentor. Sometimes we need to find the people where we see ourselves becoming. Like even if we're not there yet, finding the people and the group of people and the environment that is conducive to that type of people that I eventually want to become. Like even if I'm not there yet, if you rob from the energy of others, that it will either put you down or it'll lift you up. So the environment is everything. Well, a big chunk. We do have genes, but the genes, depending on the environment, they get turned on or turned up.
Exactly.
So environment is a big piece. And these, just as I'm just talking about environment, I don't know if you guys have you ever watched the 3 Identical Strangers? It's a documentary.
No.
Wow. Well, highly recommend it.
Shout out.
Shout out. It's a very cool documentary of a very messed up study that happened back in the day.
Oh, is that
But
with
it's
the
out.
identical twins and they raised them
They were
all in different?
triplets.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, triplets. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. I've heard of that study. I haven't seen the documentary though.
Well, I recommend it.
Wow.
Anyways, it's just like that nurturing versus nature.
Nature, yeah.
It all comes back to environment. And on that, I had something to add with what you said about, well, cholesterol is high, all of these things, all of these manifestations physically that we deem as bad. It's actually our body actually doing their job. They're actually functioning pretty well, because they're just a manifestation of how the environment is. And so it's just giving us cues and language so we can change things so that they can thrive. So if you view it from this perspective, your body is actually not faulty. It's not broken. It's not, yes, it's uncomfortable, these symptoms, but how long have you been ignoring this? It might have started at the beginning with subtle whispers, but only when it becomes physical and it becomes annoying, then you're like paying attention to it, right? So it's just, I'm very passionate about this because the body really, really, really do wants you to do well. It's really, even though there's very uncomfortable symptoms, but if given the right environment and you create a better relationship with yourself and build all of these relationships with all of these parts of you, right? There's the sad part, there's the joyous part, there's the grieving part, all of these parts that you have within you. If you're able to be curious and explore all of these parts within you, it's like at the end you have the range of the rainbow within you. It's like, doesn't have to be wrong or right, it's just what is. And I think that's the issue. Sometimes we just can't really accept or welcome what's in the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, another rant.
Oh, we love it.
I wanted to speak on
Go for it.
just like on environment a little bit, and how your environment can reflect your emotional state and your response to stress. I mean, you can think about a household, and if baby starts crying, like we were saying earlier, and if mom gets stressed to that baby crying, and then that stress is reflected on the baby itself, and then maybe the other children in the house are detecting that stress, the other caretaker of that child, and it kind of reverberates and exponentially grows. Or we can pull it back from stage one and do things to regulate our stress. Take that breath. Take a few breaths to kind of calm down and just inhibit everything from the very beginning, so that we don't allow that stress to just exponentially increase. And you're remembering also that you are, just like the rest of your family is your environment to you, you are also the environment to your family or whoever it is that you surround yourself with. So everything is really reflected, and taking the time to kind of see where things are starting again, like we were saying before, like notice what causes stress. Everything just again, just the exponential kind of changes that can happen from just one person's like mindfulness to stressful symptoms and things like that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in previously and just say, like, okay, so people might be asking nutritionally, then how can I make sure that I've helped my body meet stress? Like, if my body is so good at trying its best, like Laura said, but maybe there are things that need to provide my body. I just want to bring out like 3 nutrients that potentially you might not have thought about, or maybe you're not at an optimum level at. And that would be, one is magnesium, very important for our like nervous system, and that is found in like green leafy vegetables and like whole grains and nuts and seeds. And so if you're not eating these foods frequently, then maybe your body is not as great as ideal in meeting with the stressors. And then also B vitamins, especially for kids, especially school-aged kids. If you're not having enough B vitamins, and they come also from whole grains and seeds, then it's going to be hard for them to meet with stressors, to focus at school, those kinds of things. And lastly, also omega-3 fats, which I know is a lot of talk out there, but just it's important for like bringing back an anti-inflammatory state. So yeah, if those are like nutrients that you're like, oh, maybe I haven't thought about that, maybe I should check that out, or maybe I need some help with that. Yeah, something to keep in mind.
Big time. And that's where, I mean, like what you're all saying. So, I feel good. I feel like we identified this idea of this emotional balance with these stressors and these 3 categories, and kind of diving into the ideas of energy and all these beautiful things and circumstances, right? Your family or holidays, or just with your health and daily life. And then kind of the kind of real world ways to acknowledge these things and process these things and help with your body. So one is is in the category of chemical, I guess, or the idea of nutrition, which all of us are dietitians. I think that's what we go to first and foremost, which is great. But the idea of certain foods will impact your moods. And I love, Damaris, you're diving into the nutrients of that, which is so important. Magnesium and B vitamins and omega, and there's so many more. And I think that's why, for those listening and watching, if you don't know by now, Married to Health is extremely plant-based, extremely plant-forward. That's not to say we're dogmatic of like, you have to only eat plants, but we are very much in favor of plants. And looking at the data, we can see that most in the US are not eating enough plants, right? Where 95% of Americans are not even meeting the already low, fiber intake for what they eat. So it's highly likely, especially school-aged children, are missing out on a lot of nutrients. That is just a fact. So that's important. And then also, like what you all said, identifying the stress. If you don't even know who's trying to get you or who's breaking into your house, it's like, how are you going to then defend your house? It's the same for our body. Where's the stress coming from? Where is it even happening? You're kind of just in this dark room, not knowing who's there with you. It's important to turn the light on and go, oh, now I know where I am, right? Oh, I can identify the stress. So that was really good. And I think Laura brought this up and others as well, but just breath, awareness of the tool of your own breath, how easy it can be to turn stress or anxiety into excitement. That's so good. I don't think about that enough, because there are times where I'm like, I do feel kind of anxious, but I'm like, oh yeah, I'm excited. It's not really stress, like it's excitement, right? And we can control that by just shifting our breath, shifting our mind. That's so important. I don't know, I forgot who said this, but like, oh, I think it was maybe Laura again, but like also the point brought up of getting a guide, like the idea of seeking wise counsel, like that can be so powerful. And we have the ability to do that every single day, whether from a spiritual aspect, physical aspect, is seeking help. Like there's people who want to help you and can help you. That is important. And another point that was brought up of just some really great tools you can use is just not perpetuating it. I think that was Rachel maybe talking about that, but like just stopping it, right? It's this law of diffusion. Like you drop and it's going to diffuse. But what's cool is we don't have to let that bad mood move to our spouse and then to our kids, and then we can kind of just stop in its tracks and go, you know what? Let me use some of these other tools. Let me get something to eat, a snack, breathe, the list goes on, and we can kind of stop that negativity, because I can speak to that. If I'm not in a good mood and I'm like, oh, and then Dahlia's like, oh, I was fine. And then later on, it's like this horrible game of hot potato where, you know what, let's stop playing the hot potato game. Let's open up the potato and eat it instead and get some magnesium and some good nutrients. So it's like,
fiber.
yeah, get some fiber and some resistant starch for our gut microbiome instead of throwing the hot potato to everybody.
Some good gut in there. Just a
That's
little bit.
it. Let's switch it around. So these are all great things, and I hope whoever's listening, you take away from this that you are energy. It's beautiful and it's highly complex, and it can be overwhelming. And it's not that you're broken in any way if you are experiencing stress or anxiety or depression. It's highly normal. It's very normal. We all feel these things, but I guess what's different is just your perspective with it. What's different is your awareness of it. What's different is the tools in your toolbox, right? Is we all have these different tools, but hopefully this conversation expanded on your tools or brought awareness to your tools, and we can continue to kind of do that. And if you want to work with any of these amazing dietitians, whether it's with, on various topics, you can go to marriedhealth.com. You can learn more about our team. You can learn more about what we do, whether that's one-on-one or some of our free resources. Links are down below. Any parting words from anybody or anything else to add? A great conversation.
It's a pretty cool group of people. So no matter who you go with, it's a jackpot. I can assure that.
It's win-win, no matter
Win-win.
what. You can't lose. Well, beautiful. Well, thank you all. Thank you for those who are listening live or listening later. Thank you to all of our dietitians, our amazing team, just being here and sharing their beautiful perspectives. And again, join us live next Friday for Good Gut Live. Click down below to learn more. And as always, heal with each meal. And of course, for this topic, feel with each meal. Super important. All right. Thank you all so much.